Let me press the record button, which I've just done. How are you, bro?
Alhamdulillah.
How's
Alhamdulillah.
how's the what do you call it? Like the stable life, the routine life, the
Oh, I'm slipping out of the routine, bro. I need to get back on it.
so
First
how
week,
have
I was
you?
like sleeping early and stuff.
Yeah. How are
Now I'm
you
like,
faring now?
I'm slowly realizing that I'm skipping my bedtime alarm. You know, so I need to get back on that.
When's your bedtime alarm?
Uh, where is it? 9:45 ish is when like I need to
Ooh,
start getting
all
ready to
right,
get to bed.
all right.
Just to get ready, not necessarily, just to
Yeah,
start thinking about. All right, let's get back in.
yeah.
But
Okay.
I've been sleeping at like midnight sometimes, which isn't good.
I mean, bro. Well, when do you actually want to sleep?
I just want to get those. The problem is, right? What do you use as an alarm to wake yourself up?
There's an app called Alarmy.
Maybe that's what I should do. Invest in a different app because on the iPhone there's alarms, like you can set, but then there's also this bedtime sleep wake up thing. The
Yes.
tones, the tones that are available on the sleep wake up thing are very different to the ones that are just on a normal alarm. Now
Okay.
the sleep slash wake up setting, it has alarms tones that are very gradual and don't just shock you into waking up,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
hate. But all the other stuff is, but the problem is I need two alarms, right? I need one for Fajr and I need one for waking up, right?
Post Fajr.
Because Fajr is a bit early to get up for me. I think 4:30 in the morning is just like I'm not gonna stay up from then. Which means I have to keep readjusting the alarm all the time.
Yeah.
So I need something a bit because I'd like to use the sleep wake up thing because it's gradual, but it only really lets you use it once. Once you're up, it's like you have to set it for the next day. Anyway, it's a minor thing. It's a minor thing. I don't even know why I'm talking about it, but
Bro,
I
this
need to just
app,
have a look
yeah,
at some
I
apps on it.
highly recommend this app. I've been using it for years, and I even got the premium version when it was like voluntary, just to support them, kind of thing. Now, I don't know if I think now they've got like a premium version, which
Okay.
I guess I would have those features now as part because I gave, I probably gave them £20, bro. I don't know. Yeah. But this app, Alarmy, okay, with Y at the end, Alarmy, what it does is it's hardcore, okay, maybe too hardcore for you, but you've got different ways that that you can turn the alarm off. Okay, so you can't just tap stop and it will stop. Okay, so let me see if I go to make a new alarm. Okay, new alarm, and see what the options are in terms of turning it off. So they call it missions. So one is you have to type something out. Okay, so I guess it's like a paragraph. Another is steps. So they can calculate steps. So you have to take a certain amount of steps. One is memory. It says get your day rolling with a fun game. Okay, memory game.
Right. Oh,
And then photo. Shoot the spot you start your morning. Oh, so you have to take a photo of a certain thing
oh,
to turn the alarm off.
oh.
Then you've got shake, which is like, you have to shake the phone. Then you've got a math puzzle. Okay, stimulate your brain over and over, it says. And then finally, you got the one I use, which is you have to scan a barcode.
Right.
And that's what I do. So I put any object with a barcode on it, I put it in the bathroom, and then I wake up and I have to go to the bathroom to turn the alarm off. And then
Is
I
there no
don't
way
go
of
back.
bypassing it at all? You can't just close the app or swipe up or whatever.
No, you can't. You can possibly you can turn the phone off, maybe. But even there might even be a thing in the app where you can't turn the phone off.
Oh, I don't know if I'm that hardcore. It's too hardcore for me.
Because I just ask myself the question, like, do I actually want to get up at that time? If the
Yeah,
answer is yes, then go hardcore, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. I guess so.
And I've been using this for years, and it's really good. And there was a time when sometimes I would, go and scan this barcode and then go back to bed. But I think that was when I made the thing I was scanning too close to me, or I was sleeping too late or something like that. But very, very rarely now do I ever do that. Or I would say never now, that I do that. So it's good. And if you put it, for example, in a dark room, then you have to turn the light on in that room to scan the barcode. And then you kind of wake up more. And especially if you do it in the bathroom, then you scan it, you turn the alarm off, then you wash your face, then you're kind of done, isn't it?
No, alhamdulillah. I think I might give it a go, but no promises. Don't expect to hear any feedback next episode.
Yeah, in terms of my thing, that the thing I tried to start last week, actually, when I talked about that whole thing of waking up at 4 a.m. last episode, that was pretty much the first day I'd done it. And now it's a week later, right? So I've still been doing it, but not always fully successfully. So sometimes I wake up at 4. What I was doing, bro, is I wake up 6 hours after I sleep. And I always try and sleep at 10, but sometimes I was sleeping at 10:30. So let's say I slept at 10:30, then I would wake up 6 hours after that, which is 4:30, right? Yeah. So wake up at 4:30. I pray and this and that, but then sometimes I had sleepiness built up. So then I sleep from say 5 to 6, but then I would get up at 6. So I was still getting up earlier than I usually would. So it's still good. But what I've learned is, like, I need to really make sure I get that nap, and I need to make sure that I sleep early, if possible, like maximum 10-15, something like that. And I should be fine. Today, I mean, if someone's watching the video version, they should see that I look pretty tired. I mean, I can't tell when I look tired, but I should look tired because
You have
I feel
zero
it.
bags under your eyes, bro. I was just examining your face right now. I was like, because I was looking this up the other day. I was like, I was trying to think about dark circles, right? I noticed I had it in my eyes a bit, and I thought, oh, maybe these will start going away. So I did a quick little Google search, and realized it's quite complex for a lot of people. People get surgery and all sorts of things to get rid of it, right?
Yeah.
And then I realized, well, there's a whole list of things that could essentially lead to that sort of thing. However, a lot of it is just genetics. A lot of it is just, it's a genetic thing that happens. But like, so I was looking at you and I was like, you've got 0 there. I was looking at me, I've got a little bit. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's probably genetics. Maybe I could blame it on years of shift work, but I can't see anything on you, bro. MashaAllah. MashaAllah, MashaAllah, MashaAllah. But, everyone's different, I guess. So, yeah, it's interesting. But you do feel it, I think. And there are people that, you see it on them. If they're not having a good day, you can tell, oh, your face looks different, And a lot of these things show on people's faces, I guess. I can't see tiredness on you, though.
Really? I know. I think last episode, I remember seeing myself in the camera like, damn, I look tired, because I was tired, So, but it's all good, man. But yeah, I'm still trying to keep it going, man. It's funny that, for example, at let's say 10 a.m., it might be a good time to have the nap then. But I don't want to, I don't feel that tired. So then I don't do it, then I delay it. And then, before you know it, I haven't done the nap, but then I feel too tired. So it's funny, you have to kind of force yourself to do that nap in the day, at least at the beginning, then you can reduce afterwards. So bro, look, by the way, this episode, is this episode 107 or 8?
I don't know, but when Amin says, bro, look, it's about to go down.
No, I was just going to say, I've got a topic idea, and I've got all we could do questions. So, maybe we should do questions, because we always skip questions.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've got quite a few. I logged into the email.
Yeah.
I'm looking.
Okay.
And I'm going to let you lead with the you've got the emails open, haven't you?
Yeah. So
I'll let you lead today.
Okay.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
Wow. Okay. So we got a lot of emails. So the one
some
from
of them have been covered.
From Abdul Hamid from Libya. We already discussed this one, right? This isn't a new one.
I'd be careful with the names. Some people might not want to be named. Sometimes we read their names out, and then at the end they're like, "Can you keep me anonymous?"
Yeah. But it's just first name, inshallah. So, I think we covered this one, so that's cool. But we didn't tell him that we replied to it. Okay, then we have another one. So I will read it and see what we can do with it. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, brothers. I'm a French student. I've discovered your podcast a few weeks ago. I really like it, even if I don't understand 100% of things. May Allah help you and let you continue to do what you're doing. Actually, I'm very interested in investing, but I have no idea where to start. I'm doing biological studies, so investment is not my field. If you could give some advice about what apps or links Muslims use most and what to buy or sell, and if there are some groups, WhatsApp or whatever, where some brothers could help me out, then
You know what?
that would be good.
How about I'll just reply to this brother with the group invite. I've got a group chat. How many of us are there? There's about 90 of us, I think. Maybe a bit less now. There probably was more before. It's just, it's not a big group, but there's a good few links on there and a good few sort of guidance tools. And
bro, you know that video you sent me on about Dropbox?
Yes.
Do you follow that guy's channel?
Yeah, I think he's pretty good, pretty solid.
He seems good.
Yeah, what's his name? Jeremy Lefevre.
Jeremy.
Financial.
Yeah? Jeremy.
His channel is like financial education. I think he's got quite a few of them. So it's like there's a main one, then there's 1, 2, 3, or 2 or 3, whatever. He's pretty solid. He's a long-term investor. He's been probably investing for over a decade now, and he's not like a hype man, generally speaking. Although at first glance you might look at his thumbnails and be like, "Oh my god, what is he doing?" But actually, when you watch the video, it is very much substance. He's not like a get rich quick guy. That's not what he's trying to promote at all. He's trying to sort of educate on long-term things, and he'll share some of his ideas on certain certain sort of things. But anyway, I learned a lot from watching those videos. As far as like from the Islamic perspective, I follow Sheikh Joe Bradford on Twitter and Instagram, and he has his own website as well where you can ask questions. You can even book consultations with him if you're really serious, not just about investing, but also all sorts of life plans and financial sort of things. He's well qualified, alhamdulillah, in his field. And he also is a Sharia advisor on an app called Zoya, which a lot of the brothers use to screen certain stocks.
Zoya.
Yep, for Sharia compliance. And there's also another app called Islamically. Both of them have their positives and negatives. I think like UI interfaces and how easy they are to use, but they don't use the same sort of the same method framework. Framework or method to sort of to run the Sharia compliance. However, both of them have their FAQ pages, so it's good to study that. There's also I think it's necessary to do a bit of reading on Sharia compliance and where the Sharia committee of particular sort of countries have put the discussion of stocks and investing and stuff, because on face value you would say that there's very little that is acceptable because everything deals with interest. And that's not just with investment, that's everything in the world, right? More or less. You can't open a bank account because there's riba in there. You can't open, works with riba, yeah. So I think you have to educate yourself on riba, but also educate yourself on what the ulama have agreed upon, generally speaking, to basically function in the modern world, where essentially the riba is more or less nearly in every single thing. What else? That's it, really. I don't want to make this whole thing about stocks, but I'm no expert myself. But there's a place, obviously. I'll send a link, inshallah. If you keep that email unread, I'll send a link to a WhatsApp group. And if anybody wants to get, mainly brothers, well, only brothers, not mainly brothers, only brothers, I'm afraid. But for the sisters, as like I said, these are the tools that we're using, and I'm sure there's sisters out there that are probably a bit au fait in that sort of field. Yeah, that's it, really.
Bro, you told me about Dropbox, and then you sent me his his video. Then I bought Dropbox. Now I'm up 17%.
MashaAllah. I'm in the red, baby. I haven't been red in a long time.
Oh,
but you know what? I don't mind.
But when you told me about Dropbox, wasn't it like way lower?
Oh, I'm not red in Dropbox. I'm like 20% up in Dropbox.
Oh, you mean overall?
Overall, yeah.
Oh yeah, me too, probably, but only by 0.6. Yeah.
Oh, I don't mind. I do not mind. What am I
Yeah.
today? Yeah, 1.5. I
This,
do not mind. Akhi.
this is funny, bro. This makes me laugh. So I've got there are 6 companies I bought, right? 3 of them I really don't know much about.
Rookie mistake. Go on.
Okay. 3 of them I do know about.
Alhamdulillah.
Guess which ones I'm off on?
The ones you don't know anything about.
No, the opposite. Opposite.
Oh, good. Alhamdulillah. I was going to say that'd be already. No, that's it. That's good. But like I said, this isn't my biggest advice as an um, absolute novice. I mean, maybe I'm not giving myself any credit, but I don't want to buy. I don't want to buy into the fad and the hype, and I don't want to, be worried about things going up and down in the short term. I want to learn from the mistakes of others because there's plenty of people that are out there that have, established themselves with long-term success, and also people that are crash and burn in short-term crazes. And I don't want to be that person. And I want it to be just a chapter and a part of my life. I don't want it to be like something I've tried out now and that's it. Oh, it doesn't work out. That's it. Forget about it. No, I want it to be an integral part of my financial sort of life and planning, and I want it to be something that I can pass on to my kids and educate my kids about. So I'm not worried about now. I'm not worried about anything now. I'm not worried at all, generally speaking. Just keep going for the rest of my life. So that's it.
Before we move on, what do you think of Roblox?
Bro, that game, bro. I remember seeing that game like
As an investment.
I have no idea.
They just
I'm
went
not familiar
public.
with it. Yeah, I'm sure it's probably, worth the money they, but I've never see with stuff like that, although I'm very familiar with the video game industry, it's something I've just haven't touched with a 10-foot pole, whatever you call it. It's free. I've seen it online, but it's for kids. Like it's a video game for kids. I don't know any kids that are, it's kind of similar to Minecraft in a way. But Minecraft is what I was familiar with. This is something I'm not really familiar with. I could always boot it up and have a go and see what the craze is about. But I know it's popular because when I had an Xbox, there was they have charts, right? Like what are the most popular games right now, and it was always in the top 5, top 10.
Wow.
So I was like, well, this is something that clearly there's a huge community behind it, so I'm sure it's worth it.
Yeah, I heard that like developers can build on top of it stuff. I don't know what it is, whether it's mods or something. I think they have an ecosystem, so that's like a good sign.
Yeah, I think that the only worry is for stuff like that, you need to know how diverse it is, because I think a video game can become a platform after a certain. It has to evolve to a platform to become something long term. Otherwise, the next big game comes out and everyone forgets about the original one. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But some things do stand the test of time for years.
Yeah.
And you just got to assess it. Is there more to it than just what comes at face value?
Yes.
It wasn't long ago everyone's talking about Fortnite. I don't know how many people play Fortnite now. I know it's still very popular, but at the same time, there's a lot of things.
Keep on to the attention.
There's a lot of things that use the same Fortnite formula that have taken attention away from it. And at the end of the day, what is it? It's just a video game. There's nothing further than that.
Yeah.
But when you look at other companies, for example, you've got, a company that's known for what smartphones, for example, will start delving into other areas and then expanding into other fields and dominate. And that's what you kind of want to look for. You want to look for something that maybe, inshallah, expands and is going to be around for the next 10 years.
Yeah. Okay. So next one. Okay, this is like from some kind of company email address sounding thing. Assalamu alaikum, Amin and Akhitui. I had a question that's been on my mind for years, and I've never talked to anyone about this before.
Exclusive. Mind Heist exclusive.
Exclusive.
This is it. Can we title this episode Mind Heist exclusive?
Yes, I'll fit it in, inshallah.
Bro.
Growing up,
answering some exclusive questions.
My parents never talked to me about intimacy in marriage.
Oh God, bro, you should have braced me for this. Oh no!
I hadn't read it ahead either. Okay. Never talked to me about marriage, intimacy in marriage. And I started looking online to know more about sex. This is how I stumbled across pornography at age 10, unfortunately. My question
10?
is,
At 10. So he was looking. Okay, go on then. Continue. Sorry.
yeah, I see what you're
No,
saying.
because
Yeah.
he was thinking about marriage at 10. That's why it confused me. But go on.
Mad thing. Okay. High aspirations. My question is, why is the topic of sex so taboo in Islam? I'm now in my early 20s, and it feels as though my parents hid sexual education from me throughout my adolescence, only to try and ram marriage down my throat at age 21. Is this common with Muslim parents, or is it just me?
That's a good
Looking
question.
forward to hearing your views and opinions, inshallah.
Good
Love the
question.
podcast, by the way.
Alhamdulillah. Let's discuss the elephant in the room, right? When I first, you know what? I remember like my young mind, because I was similarly. I don't think I was told anything by my parents until I brought it up myself. Do you know what I mean? So I remember up until year 6, I was absolutely oblivious to the whole sort of birds and the bees, right? Didn't understand all of that, wasn't aware of it. And my theory, I had to come up with a theory in my head of how babies were made, right? My theory, which I never shared with anyone, was that when a man and woman get married, right? When they put the ring on their finger, it just happens, bro. It's like a thing that happens, like the magic of love, right?
Sounds logical, bro.
Sounds logical, bro. Something with the feelings and that. Boom. Woman
Something to do
gets
with that
triggered.
ring.
Something to do with that ring.
It's
right?
like the ring is like, you know, how the one is made in Lord of the Rings in fire.
One
and
ring to rule them all, bro.
It.
That's it. So then I was in year 6, and it was it. That was it, bro. That was a sex education class. Out of the blue, they hit us with that, and they basically put some video on, and I really don't remember it. Obviously, some sort of child-friendly documentary thing. And I remember just sinking into my chair, like, what the hell is this? I don't understand what I'm looking at. What is all of this? I was so confused.
Did you feel kind of embarrassment?
Oh yeah, but then there was. So I remember the class was split into tables, right? And each table had about 4 or 5, kids on it in class. So I must have been 9.
You
Around 9 years old.
Jenny feeling awfully
Bro, I
embarrassed.
remember there was a few boys and there was a girl opposite me. I still remember her name, Miranda. I remember that name because she was very like streetwise,
Okay.
for a 9 or 10-year-old. Okay. So it's like everybody knew it all, and she very much probably knew it all. She was like, "What's wrong with you?" Do you know what I mean? I was like, "What the hell is this? I don't know." And then they all found it hilarious because I did not have a clue what this was. Now, maybe some could argue. I think they were taught a lot of it in year 4.
Right.
So this was nothing new. However, I missed year 4 and I missed year 3 because I was in Tunisia at the time. So I redid a couple, like I did year 1 and 2, and then I went to Tunisia and had to do like year 1 and 2 again or something like that. So then when I came,
you were literally in the village,
bro. I was, bro. So when I came to the UK, I went straight into year 5. Didn't hear anything about that in year 5, and I think it was year 6 when I. Anyway, so I remember my mum picked me up from school afterwards. Yeah, I remember my mum was driving for some reason. I can't remember why. My mum was driving the car at the front, but I was sat in the back seat on my own. And I remember, like, I don't know why I was sat there. Allah knows best. But I remember, like, sort of asking my mum. I was like, "Oh, mum, I don't know what they put on today," but I don't know. I was just obviously really horrified. But I had, alhamdulillah, clearly I must have had some sort of good relationship with my mum that I could discuss that, right? And then she sort of, I think the benefit was that she didn't have to face me, right? Because she's driving. So she's looking in the rear view.
Yeah, just glance at the mirror now. And
you know what? Alhamdulillah, my mum, despite being somebody who, grew up in Morocco and was born there and stuff, she was very much in tune with, life here and stuff like that. So she said, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the truth. That's what happens." Essentially, I can't remember word for word. And I was like, "What?" I was just in shock. But that was it. That was the conversation. That was the last of it. So from that, one could say that it's the responsibility of the school that adequately taught that, right? Yes. However, at the same time, I think what's important to highlight is like the brother has said, that you have to have that comfort with your parents to be able to approach at least one of them about the subject matter when you become aware of it. Now, the argument is, do you as a parent approach your child first, or do you just wait till they come around and maybe that's the age? Clearly, I was 9 when it was revealed to me, but I was like one of the youngest in my year. I wasn't born until like July 29th. So usually in the school system, I'm quite young. Everyone is generally older than me. So because of that, yeah, it's going to be like 9-10 years old when actually it could be younger now. But that was back then. But it could be younger now. It could be kids much younger that are fully aware of this. And I wouldn't be surprised considering, the internet at their fingertips and stuff. At least when we were that age, Akhi, we didn't have, the only way you get internet is if it was on the computer. And even then, the computer was in the lounge. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to accidentally stumble on anything or whatever like that.
Yeah.
So what about you, bro? Elephant in the room, bro.
My parents didn't do nothing, bro. I just in school we had a few things because it was like an international school.
Where was that?
Yeah, in UAE.
Okay.
Because I only went to year 1 in England. That's it. I didn't do any other schooling in England.
MashaAllah.
Right? So year 2, I was in UAE, and then onwards it was all in UAE. So I think it was year 7.
Oh, that's late, bro.
I mean, there was something in year 6, but I don't think it was like what you're saying about when you were 9. It wasn't that level, and that was year 6. So the proper thing was year 7, I believe, and the parents had to like consent to it.
Right.
So they had to like sign a paper and this and that. So I did that, and I feel like I was a bit like you, like your reaction actually. Definitely more innocent than the rest in the class, Alhamdulillah, I think it was a good thing. And I don't think I must have been 11 then. I don't think that's too late per se. I mean, especially for our generation, right? These days, maybe you're forced to talk about it earlier, but for that generation, it was absolutely fine. And I did feel that kind of embarrassment, like, what the hell? Almost, what I remember at least is like denial. Like it was uncomfortable to accept that that's how it worked, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what I remember anyway. And then we had something, I think, in year 10. And that year 10 thing, I'll tell you now, that was propaganda. Because
this is in the UAE, yeah?
This is in UAE, and they're teaching you about stuff like contraception and stuff. And it's like, why would we need to know that? Especially the Muslim kids, like, again, it was something that the parents all kind of would agree to, but the parents, it's not like the parents saw everything that was going to be shared, right?
Yeah.
And I think my mum was in 2 minds about it, because she didn't want me to be ignorant of it, but also it's like we're Muslim, and so do we want to see do we want to know what they're saying, or is there something we shouldn't know? I remember all the Emirati kids in the class, their parents wouldn't let them do it,
right?
So they kind of just didn't attend those sessions. But yeah, I remember that, thinking it was very awkward, and it was very much like one of those moments in my life where it's like, okay, the kuffar are like this and we're not like this, even though like my parents or no one specific had told me like, oh, the kuffar do that and don't do that, and zina is haram. And what's zina? Like, what is zina, at that age? So yeah, but I think, I was living at a much more innocent time, like just in general, and then place, because in the UK, even our generation, by the time you're 15, I mean, everyone around you is involved in something like this, I think, right?
No,
so but for me, I realize now that we was very innocent where we were. We were just literally just playing, just getting on with our life, kind of more innocently. And even the kuffar, the environment was such that no one would really get into that stuff. You know what I mean? Like there was a little bit of at maybe age 16, there was a bit of, some of these kids were like getting access to alcohol, stuff like that.
Okay.
But it seemed like, you know, this was a level above that actually in terms of seriousness. Because, you know, some of these kids, bro, the way they are, their parents will give them alcohol, isn't it? You know,
Yeah, yeah,
when you
definitely.
turn 16, it's like, okay, you can have a little bit, right?
Yeah.
You know, have a bit of poison, you know.
Yeah.
So that, you know, this is interesting point that is being brought up in terms of like the place I was in, the environment, you know, because even though it was like a kind of a Western school, but most of the teachers are British, just the fact we were in a Muslim country, it made the environment much more innocent, I feel, you know, even though we were given that kind of education, but really it's propaganda, you know, teaching about contraceptives. Even I remember to this date, I remember one of the details from these sessions is talking about how much it costs to raise a baby, right, or to
Yeah.
raise a child.
Yeah.
And it's like, obviously the way they teach it is with this scarcity mindset, and with this thing like, oh, you definitely don't, you know, want to get pregnant because it's going to cost like, you know, whatever, 30,000
Yeah.
pounds by the time they're 18. And it's like, that's completely not the Muslim perspective. But we're
So
in a
they
Muslim country and we're getting the kafir's mindset on it.
so they're adopting obviously whatever the Western sort of mindset is, which I very vividly remember from school. So I remember it was either year 7 or year 8, same sort of thing. So they had something, I don't know if they still have it now, but it's PHSE. I can't remember what it
Yeah,
stands
yeah,
for,
yeah.
but this was sort of like the, you know, the life studies sort of
Yeah.
thing. You'd
Physical
have to,
health and social education, maybe.
something like that. Yeah, and I remember every year was called something different. But I remember actually the contraception sort of
Yeah.
lesson.
Yeah.
Oh my god, you know, I remember it was flipping. They brought all sorts of stuff in, bro.
Yeah,
They
man.
brought
Yeah.
all sorts of flipping, you know, models and stuff, um, and got everybody to flip and apply this stuff. Do you
Yeah.
understand?
It is
You know,
embarrassing, bro.
it's very much embarrassing. And I remember just freaking out. And the thing is, you know, my whole, what I can say, alhamdulillah, safely, is that my whole time in school, you know, especially secondary school, I mean, primary school and secondary school, but especially secondary school, I was very much um, not reserved, but like I wouldn't get into any trouble. I had a decent group of mates, but we were also a bit like outcasts and geeky and nerdy and whatever. And, you know, wasn't very popular in that sense. I mean, everybody knew me because I had an afro and stuff, but you know, I wasn't quote unquote the popular kid and stuff, and I wouldn't get engaged with any of that sort of stuff. Probably not because I didn't want to. I wouldn't say I was necessarily practicing, like actively aware of my deen, but there was fundamental things that we were aware of. You don't drink, you don't smoke, you don't have girlfriends, all that sort of stuff. All right. And you just grew up with that. And even though everybody else did, I don't think the guys that I was friends with could, even if they wanted to, you know,
Okay.
because they were undesirables, you know. So that was the sort of friend circle I had, which is important. I think it's important to consider that, because if you're it shows, doesn't it? The friends that you are with are the ones that will essentially take you either this way and that way, even if they're kuffar, bro. So I think that is important, and it's important, I suppose, to sort of gauge where your kids are in the sort of social circles. And I don't know if that's something that is actively sort of done, or I mean, I can't, obviously now my kids are too young to really judge that, but it'd be interesting to observe that. But that's something you can't see. It's taken away from you, really. In school, you don't know where they fit in the sort of social hierarchy. And I think that has a big impact. But I remember it was about year 7 and 8, especially year 7, where the shaming started coming in, right? So year 6, year 5, 6, actually year 6, there was a bit of shaming, you know. It was a bit weird, but we're all young, but there's always shaming about not having a girlfriend or never having a girlfriend all this time. And that was year 6, bro.
Yeah.
Right. But I didn't really, I don't remember like getting that kind of, you know, hate or whatever you want to call it, shaming. But then it's like year 7 and 8 is where it really starts kicking in. And, you know, people try and make you feel bad for not wanting that or not. And it was not even about not wanting it, but even not being able to. Like the friends I had weren't able to have to develop any relationship because they were, like I said, undesirable, whatever you want to call it.
Degenerates.
The degenerates. But it's like I said, it's interesting how that can be a barrier in and of itself.
Sometimes a useful barrier. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And you know what? I remember, actually, even at university, when I started university, it was, once again, it was like a fresh new, because I went to college, I went to secondary school and college in the same sort of place. So for years, I was surrounded by the same sort of social circles. University was a big new sort of wide world, right?
You
Now
could
I didn't get in,
become a new akhi
yeah.
tweet.
Well, this is it. It's a vital choice you have to make.
Yeah.
Now, the course I studied was sociology and criminology, right? Which is predominantly not a Muslim course. You wouldn't find Muslims actively in that course. In fact, there was probably only one Muslim that I kind of was aware he was a Muslim. So everyone else, once again, I was the same social dynamic. But I remember having to make, this is when I started practicing. It was just to run up to uni. But I remember I had to make a conscious decision. Okay, if I'm going to sit with anybody, it has to be the same sort of thing. I have to find a group of undesirables that I can just focus on work with. And that's exactly what I did. It was like a carbon copy of the friends that I had before. These very sort of nerdy, sort of, you know, geeky kind of boys.
Yeah.
But some of them did have girlfriends and stuff, but it wasn't like, they obviously had partners that were outside of the university space, you know, so it wasn't something that was going to actively distract us during our studies.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. You have to kind of make sure that the kids have friends that are not going to lead them into this weird place and shame them and stuff. But yeah, generally, to go back to the brother's sort of response, where do parents sit in this whole thing? I don't know. You know, is it the father's responsibility? Is it the mother's? You know, I found it way more comfortable if I ever had to discuss it with my mother. You know, it's never something my father has even hinted at. You know, it's not something in the arena. It's not a discussion ever. Would it ever been? Has he spoken to my sisters about it? I have no idea. Do you know what I mean? But I think it's always been my mother. I don't know if you've had any discussions with your parents or have been forced to, but generally, I don't know if it should fall on the mother, but I think generally it is the easier sort of option. I think they're a lot more approachable to both, you know, boys and girls.
Really? Yeah. Interesting. That's not my first impression, you know.
Is it not?
What I was thinking happens is that the father doesn't want to do it because it's, you know, awkward. And so the mother does it not because, you know, the relationship is better or she's more comfortable doing it, but because just, you know, she wants to do what's best for her kids. And so that pushes her to do it. So in my head, I was thinking ideally, you know, maybe the father would talk to the boys and the mother talk to the girls. But I see what you're saying as well. So I don't know. I mean, personally, I'm expecting that I would definitely talk to my son or sons about it. That's kind of what I am expecting, you know, or if not me. And I don't see myself sitting down with him and speaking about this specifically. I just think, sure, it would come up in day-to-day life somehow. Yeah. And I think when they're young, you would avoid the topic and you would, you know, say, oh, you know, kids just kind of, you know, Allah gives you kids, you know, whatever, you know, just, you know, disguise it. But I think what I'm potentially would do is I wouldn't hide it so much. Like when that topic comes up, we can go into differing, you know, amount of detail depending on the age, you know.
But we know what's, you know, judging by our deen and judging by the benefits of being open and approachable, we can see those benefits now. Like there was a recent viral sort of story in the Muslim community here. 2 16-year-old Muslims, you know, a boy and a girl, they got married, right, with the support and the help of their parents. 16. And I remember Sheikh Abdul Wahid Stevenson, I believe his name is. I follow him on Instagram. I think he did the nikah for them, and he did a nice little speech about it and stuff. But it was, you know, there's a nice photo of them together. Alhamdulillah, they're, you know, very smiley, happy, and clearly, I haven't listened to the whole story or whatever, but clearly, their parents saw this as an opportunity to guide them away from, you know, the haram and put them in a situation that's halal. Now, you know, may Allah bless them both, and I think it's beautiful, them and their families, to support that, you know. And also it'd be interesting to even get an insight into that kind of way of thinking, because you've clearly identified that 16 was quite a, you know, a bit of a, at least over there, was a bit of a tightrope sort of, you're going to fall this way or that way, and people start really going, you know, this way or that way with it. I think even here, 16 is probably, unfortunately, everybody's well aware of everything by that age. You know, there's no secrets there. But at the same time, at the same time, some Muslims, unfortunately, and Allah knows best how practicing and how aware they were very against it, and they were. I remember seeing comments saying that this is child marriage and this is illegal. Well, it's not legal. It's actually legal in the UK at 16, but this shouldn't be legal and all this other stuff. But actually you can do anything else before that, can't you? Like if they were together in not in a marriage setting where her rights are protected and everybody's respected and all of that stuff, there would be no one would be batting an eyelid, and then it'll be don't judge them just because they're in a haram relationship. Do you know what I mean? Only God can judge, that kind of narrative. So I think there has to be a bit of a wider education on that and an acceptability on that, because
I don't actually agree with it, bro. Like I think it's case by case, right?
No, this is what I'm saying. Yeah. What I was going to move on to is the case by case thing. My concern is obviously, are the kids ready for that? But if both parents, bi'idhnillah, have their heads screwed on from both sides of the family, and they believe, they're quite mature, the girl's quite mature, and you do find people like that, Akhi. I kid you not. At this age, at 27, I remember even recently when I last was in London, somebody introduced me to this 17-year-old boy. I didn't know he was 17. The way he spoke, the way he carried himself. I was with him for a while, for a few hours, and I thought this was a grown man. I thought he was around my age. They told me he was 17. I was like, subhanallah. So there are definitely, young men that are very, very well, mannered and stuff. Mm. But what were you saying? I cut you off. Apologies.
Yeah, I think I've heard. And of course, it's all anecdotal, right? But I've heard that a few, stories of people getting married at, 19, 18, and unfortunately, it often, ends in divorce, sometimes with kids, sometimes without. Yeah. And of course, you don't want to do that, and you don't want to sow the seeds for that. But the only one reason that, as a general thing, especially maybe in the UK or more kind of comfortable countries, I wouldn't recommend it generally, is only because of the maturity thing. If it wasn't for that, then 16, why not? 18, why not? Like, it doesn't really, like, I actually try and avoid the use of, numbers when it comes to your age. Like, you're either baligh or you're not baligh, you're mature or you're not mature. It's not, numbers are just numbers,
I think, you know what, with this kind of thing, there has to be two sides to this coin of acceptability. There has to be, not only is there an acceptability that this is possible and can be encouraged for someone who's ready and mature, but also the removal of the stigma of divorce as well. Because I think what you've got is this 1-2 punch of divorce is the worst thing, especially for a woman, right? It's like, oh, she's a divorcee, well, that's it, game over. Right? Or she's got kids, game over. This wasn't something necessarily a stigma in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and there was no people got divorced, people got remarried. This was something that was well known, okay, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, or even generally speaking. But now, there is this, and there always has been for a long time, this element of, oh, that's it. They were divorced before, so that's it. Nobody wants them. Whatever, and people think that of their own.
Like, I understand, we can try and remove we can remove the stigma, right? Meaning, if someone's divorced, you assume that there's something wrong with them. Yeah, I agree with that, and we should do that. Okay, but can we remove the preference of a man to marry a non-divorced woman, or vice versa? Like, isn't that just something normal? And
I don't know. I have,
like, ask any unmarried man, if you had the choice, would you marry a divorced woman or a never married before woman? What they're gonna say.
I don't know. Everyone's different, I guess. I don't know.
Would anyone choose a divorced woman, though?
It might be because
vice versa. By the way,
it might be because I have people in my family that have been divorced, and I don't see that as affecting them in any way. And maybe I've seen how that can affect somebody. And also anecdotally, bro, you always hear, my wife always speaks to me about people that are divorced that have gone through so much hardship and, kids on their own and stuff. And, and I always feel bad for those sort of people, because all I can assume is like they're just going through such hardship that actually I feel like, I don't know, I feel like it's not important. It's not, it's not the end of the world. Like you can have, sometimes you'll have, I remember a friend of mine, I'm not going to mention his name, but he got divorced, and he was trying to get married for years afterwards, right? Years and years. Alhamdulillah, I think he's married now, or at least very, very close in the process. But for a long, long time, akhi, and that was a stigma that even he carried, because I think some people assume, oh, it's something wrong with you, you know.
Yes.
And actually, sometimes it's a two-way street. You know, a lot of the time, it doesn't have to be, you know, bad news and abuse for that to happen. Sometimes it's just not there anymore. Do you understand?
Yeah. And
And
that's what we should kind of fix, you know, we should fix that. But I just still think that is very normal, especially when the divorce rate is so high. Ironically, actually, when the divorce rate is so high, people, when they're getting married for the first time, they're kind of worried about, you know, what could lead to divorce. Let me try and like remove all the risks, right?
they say
And one
about
of the risks is that you marry someone who has, you know, baggage or certain assumptions of this and that,
yeah,
or even someone who's got kids. I mean, that's a whole other subject, actually, I think.
yeah,
So I just feel it's quite understandable if someone's saying, look, divorce rate is so high, there's something going on these days that is causing divorce to be so high. I need to be really risk averse here, very careful. And therefore, I just, you know, I prefer, and for the risk reasons, I'm going to marry someone not previously married. You know, not because they were divorced because they're bad or because they're argumentative or whatever it is, not because of that, just because preference and the risk factor, you know,
I
I
think,
can't
you know,
see that going away.
I think the thing where I'd, you know, obviously I'm not in that situation, but to hypothetically put myself in that situation, I'd be like, I'd really be judging myself if I felt like everything lined up. So like, imagine there was somebody who, you know, everything, alhamdulillah, was exactly what you were looking for. But the only issue was, oh, and generally that tends to be it. The only thing that you could say is bad about them, oh, they you know, they were married before. And at that point, you've got to ask yourself, well, things are always, you know, there's always the thing is with marriage, and maybe because I took a bit of a leap of faith in the sense that, you know, I didn't know my wife relatively at all before, you know, I got married, alhamdulillah. You know, I was somewhat interested. I contacted her to get in contact with her father. Before I knew it, my whole family were already there, and I met all of her family before I even saw her, you know, in person. So
I was going to do Zaghruda then,
but it was, I remember thinking, you know what, I know the key sort of facts, you know, where she's from, what kind of upbringing she's had, etc. The rest of it generally is a tawakkul ala Allah, you know, and a leap of faith, you know. And I remember being very sort of conscious of that, because you can sit there always juggling, like you said, trying to minimize the divorce sort of thing, right? So
risks,
you're like,
yeah.
oh, risk, okay, this could happen, and this could happen, and this could
Yes.
happen. But the thing is, there's always that in everything.
Yeah.
Every single thing you do, there's always that. And I think, alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed us with a beautiful sort of methodology of istikhara, where you pray your istikhara and go for it. It's not pray your istikhara and wait for a dream or wait for a sign, but it's pray your istikhara and go on the path, tread the path. And if, you know, by Allah's will, that path doesn't lead anywhere and it's not successful, then that's your answer, right? And if it does, then bi'idhnillah khair.
Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately, I think sometimes we go into overboard with that, because all we're thinking about is, you know, risk averse, when actually every journey you go on, every blessing you're given, you'll be tested with, really. Anything, you know, you just like now, you know, I was talking about my work and I wanted a new job and blah, 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 blah. So I got a new job. And then even when I got that job, I was faced with a million tests, you know, and this podcast has documented all of that, from when I was working in retail to when I went to the emergency services. I remember that jump. I was like, oh, alhamdulillah, yes. And then as soon as I got there, I was like, oh my God, what have I done? You know, and now same thing, you know, alhamdulillah, I've got a new role, but this could come with its tests and trials as well.
Yes.
It's always that. It's always that.
Yes.
So I think some part of us, we just need to be prepared that, hey, this is good. This is khair. And this, I will be tested at some point with this.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah. And maybe people should see it as, okay, there are many things that make up this potential wife or husband, right? There are many things, okay, their values, their upbringing, where they were brought up, their age, their height, their this and that, right? And one of those is, were they married before or not, right? But one of them. So obviously, I think maybe what a lot of people would do is they'll see divorced, and that's the red flag, or not the red flag, the red line or whatever. Like, I halas, just say no. Like, regardless of the other factors, no.
Yeah.
And that's maybe, yeah, we shouldn't be like that, where it's like, as soon as you hear that, it's like, I don't care how good all the rest is.
Yeah,
No. Like, that's extreme. Yeah, I would say. Yeah. But should we actually answer the question, right? So basically what he was saying, if it's
we've
a
gone
he,
far, haven't we? We got very far.
he said,
thinking, what's
why
the
is
question
the
again?
yeah, why is the topic so taboo in Islam? That's one question he said.
Why is it topic?
Well, I would say it's not taboo in Islam.
It's not taboo. It's, subhanAllah, there's details in the Quran about what I'd consider sexual education, but at the same time, look how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about it in the Quran, right? It's not explicit,
Yeah, it's not
but
direct and explicit. Yeah,
but it's also understood.
yes.
Do you understand?
Yes.
If you were even to read the tafsir of that, it's understood, and I think that's the middle path. Because sometimes there are brothers that, and sometimes da'is, I'd call them, that try and remove this stigma of not speaking about this, but they also go way overboard, and
that
it's
happened
hard.
to me too many times, bro. I'm driving, playing a podcast, and all of a sudden, boom, they go into this topic, and I'm like,
they can go into it, but once again, sometimes I think that to try and get over this taboo, they go way too far on the other end of the spectrum.
Yes.
And I'm like, no,
Too
that's
explicit.
uncomfortable, because at the same time, we have our cultures, we have our what's acceptable, what isn't. In some cultures, to hold your hand, the wife of your hand, the hand of your wife, the hand of your wife in the street is seen as, oh, that's too much, right? That's in certain cultures, So I think you can be, just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, detailed in the Quran, you can be very much on this middle path. It's not about not speaking about it at all, but it's also about having some manners and having some courtesy and some respect. I mean, look now, right? Here's a strange phenomenon. The Simpsons. I don't know if you ever watched The Simpsons growing up. Right?
Of course.
I watched The Simpsons growing up. How many jokes that were maybe explicit, but I didn't get it when I was younger.
Yeah.
And now when I rewatch it, I'm like, oh, I get that. But I know that my kid wouldn't get it.
Yeah.
However, if they were extremely explicit, which they're not, but if they were explicit, in terminology and whatever, then yes, someone very young would get it. So you need to have that middle path so that it's not like, oh, this is for 18 plus only they can attend this lecture. No, it should be something even in Jum'ah that somebody can speak about with adab and a certain amount of, linguistic flair to navigate around some of that. And that's normal. That is normal.
Yeah. I mean, no doubt it's too, I guess, taboo, or it's avoided too much, It's like whenever the topic might come up, between kids and parents, it's like shut down immediately. And, this is the problem. And I understand, where they're coming from, because Allahu A'lam, how our parents and their parents, how they learn about this. But I feel like it's just more natural. Even the fact that you have education about, like a flipping, animals, they don't get no education, right? They kind of just know. And I know humans are more sophisticated than that, but still, I feel like ideally it should be done in a natural way. And one of the ways to make it, the education, more natural and less awkward and just kind of flow and all of that, is by mixing the different ages together more, And this is one of the problems with compulsory schooling till age 16, 18, whatever, even 21, not compulsory, but, is you're always with people your age. What if when you were, 10, you're mixing with 13-year-olds, and when you're 13, you're mixing with, 9-year-olds and 17-year-olds, and, whether it's in your Quran class or football team or, even in your education, whatever education, if we're mixing ages more, when you're 17, you're going with the ammos here, ammos there, people who are 30, people who are 45, this is happening less and less. I think we know that, right? Like mixing with, because when do you mix with people of different ages? It's not out of your choice usually. It's usually a family occasion, family coming together, your cousins are different ages, your uncles and this and that. Or it's through some kind of something, like I said, like a class or a sports event or something. Like, I think that's something that can help, mixing of the ages more. And then you pick up on these things, bro. Like, you're 10 and you're with 13-year-olds, they might mention things and you hear. And then the second thing, of course, is when you hear these things, when you hear like the khutbah you're talking about, then you should have that relationship with your parents where you can ask. They won't fully shut it down. They will, give you little tidbits here and there.
There's also, as well as the mixing of ages, there should be obviously the segregation of both boys and girls, probably all the time, but especially during this sort of discussion and this education, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to have, I mean, let's face it, every single boy in that class is trying to impress someone all the time. There's always this game of cat and mouse, sort of trying to impress not only your friends, your boys, but also the girls on the class as well. That's something that's always there. People act up, and you see it even, when you're flipping a bit older, you're with your boys, and then some girl comes and chats, and then all the boys start acting up, and you can just see that psychology, right? So with that, it blocks the opportunity for sincere sort of question and answer, because actually you're going to have a lot of boys. And I remember, I was full of questions in that. I had no idea, but God forbid I was ever going to open my mouth, because I know I was just going to get judged straight away for not knowing all of this stuff.
So when you did it in school, was it mixed?
Oh yeah, because our classes were mixed.
Oh wow.
Our classes were mixed. Yeah.
Well,
so
our classes were mixed, but for this it was separate.
No, so this is what I'm saying. So for us, the first ever exposure, which I said when I was 10 or 9 or 10, 9 years old, was mixed. And then even later on, when it was contraception, all that stuff, that was mixed as well.
Oh, yeah. No, that's not good.
Yeah, bro.
That's not
and even,
good.
It went even further. Like my deeper study into all of that was when I took health and social care for GCSE, right? And there was 3 boys in the whole class of like 20 or 30 people, right? So we were a minority.
Imagine.
We were a minority. Even the only reason we took that course was because we had it in our heads that maybe we'd study medicine one day. And that was the closest thing that we could really, apart from science, which was already established and you already study it. Yeah. Like, what else can I take that might be, helpful in that field? And that was it. But yeah, even then it got even further. But like, especially if you're a minority in a girls' class, it's just, it's difficult to even raise your hand and discuss that.
Yeah. Even, damn, I forgot his name now. This author, right? He writes about, he's got like a book about gender matters, it's called. It's about the differences between boys and girls. And then he's got a book about the problems that boys are facing these days. And then another one about what girls are facing. Very good author and book and stuff. So he recommends actually that boys ideally should study on their own, right, away from girls. They should go to boys only schools, because he said it just helps. It helps with their education in every way, yani. And just the fact that girls are not in the room, it makes boys just completely behave differently.
Yeah,
and from a pretty young age, probably even from 11 years old or something. There's a big difference there. But actually, if I fundamentally think about this question, why among Muslims it's so taboo? Like, why? I don't know. Like, I don't know the answer actually at all.
It's shyness is from Iman, and sometimes that piles on top of culture, and that piles on top of expectations. I mean, I'm sure it was very much like that in the UK years ago, the shyness. But with time, that shyness goes away.
Maybe I don't know enough about them, but it seems like the Sahaba were not like this.
I think a deep study needs to be done on that, because I'm sure people have done that, but I think often, I know I'm guilty of it, I fall into an assumption and an expectation of the Sahaba based on my own interpretation of what I've read.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And people, I've noticed, like liberal Muslims, I'll call them that, They sometimes use evidence and stuff from the Sahaba, but then someone else counters that by, oh no, you don't know Umar al-Khattab like this, because this is what he used to do, right?
Yeah.
And everybody wants to use the
Yeah.
Sahaba to further their own agenda and their own perspective. So it's difficult unless you're sitting right there. But you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if it was somewhat similar to how generally it is now, right? The only difference is, I think now with the forced exposure, because generally you're not going to see a lot of that stuff then, at least, especially when Islam had, when Islam had basically sunk its teeth into the society there. Maybe beforehand in Jahiliyyah, there may have been a bit more flipping, messing about and stuff in terms of people being aware of zina and being aware of that being, a prevalent in society, with prostitution very much open and stuff like that. But then when Islam is established in the early days and you're raising a child in that sort of environment, there isn't going to be the exposure that there is now. You've got internet, TV screens, of everything, just generally walking down the street. There's all of this stuff. There's all of this, all this stimuli, so to speak. And in this society, it's very dangerous. At what point does that kick in for kids? Is it something that kicks in because they've seen? That's always a question in my mind. Is it that a child has seen, for example, a male react to a woman and then thought, okay, that's the way that they're meant to react, and then it suddenly kicks in? Or is it automatic? Is it like a natural thing that kicks in? Or do you know what I mean? Can you remember that sort of thought process? Allah knows best. Because it's not like you were saying earlier about age, right? It's not like, a particular number comes, you're 11 now, boom, it just happens as soon as it's your 11th birthday. So it's about gauging that. And also, I'll be honest, Akhi, I am very much of the opinion that most people, the large majority of Muslims, find out the wrong way, and they engage in the wrong thing to get there.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at like the pornography numbers, the stats, and seeing all these Muslim countries that are just through the roof. Generally Muslim countries that are quite, I don't want to say liberal and open, but the numbers for like Saudi Arabia, the numbers for Pakistan, the numbers for these kind of countries are through the roof. I think it was Pakistan, possibly. I could be wrong. I don't want to offend anybody, but I remember reading it was like number 1 in the world. I could be wrong, but it just shows. It shows this repression, I'll call it, which is the factor of that is many, many different things. One of them, it's all cogs. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
For example, you can't have people marrying at 16 without all the other things that need to be accepted as well. For example, the requirements for people to get married are insane. The social requirements, the cultural requirements. In Tunisia, I know the expectations are like, you need to bring all this sort of gold, you need to have a job, you need to have a car, you need to have a house, you need to have all this stuff. Imagine if that existed here. You need to own your own home, right? Before that, or you need to have a car, house, job, all this other stuff. There's people that are like 35, 40, 45 years old and they still haven't got married yet. Not because they don't want to, but because the expectation is so harsh and severe.
Yeah.
So that has to go. Or that has to be tackled. The stigmas as well, they have to be tackled. And obviously you've got all of the mixing and all of the these are all things.
Yeah.
What you said, like the symptoms of propaganda that actually you're getting now. Muslim countries, like you've highlighted, that just put their hands up and say, well, listen, they're going to do it anyway, so we might as well teach them how to do it safely, right? And that's why they're teaching that. That is the approach. The approach at school was that they're going to do it anyway, so the least we can do is teach them how not to get diseases and how not to get pregnant, right?
Yeah.
Because they're not going to be able to handle either. But either way, they're going to do it. And do you know what? It's the same thing about the same perspective they have about drugs, right? It's like, well, they're going to do it anyway. I remember being taught how to take drugs safely at school. Now, obviously, there was drugs that they would tell us stay away from completely, like heroin, for example. But stuff like LSD, cannabis, what else? These are the minor ones. And I say minor, they're not. They're not. But I remember specifically being taught, if you take speed, make sure that you drink loads and loads of water. Otherwise, you get dehydrated, you could die. All this other stuff. And I was just sitting there like, this is crazy. But they've lost the plot so much.
Yeah.
That all they
Damage
can do
control.
is damage control. It's the best way for it. And what do you do? What do you do? sometimes, and considering the work that I do for a living, sometimes you do think, subhanallah, it's rife. These things, these diseases in the society are so rife. The cannabis, the drugs, everything, all these addictions that people are involved in, they are so rife that actually sometimes the criminalization of it does do more harm than good, because the people that take advantage of the criminalization are obviously the criminals, the people that can, if you want to buy some cocaine, for example, well, actually 20% of it is cocaine. The rest of it, the 80%, is sawdust,
Chalk.
rat poison, chalk, whatever they can get their hands on, because the customer isn't going to complain. There's no rights in this, But actually, the investment shouldn't be, Allah knows best, but it shouldn't be in the legalization or the criminalization, but it should be on the what's the word I'm thinking of? The rehabilitation. That's where it should be. It should be a real powerful sort of rehabilitation thing. That's where all the funding should go.
I think, bro, the whole Western society has been doing a very big experiment over the last 200 years. And the result, the conclusion is that liberalism doesn't work. It does not work, because basically, what's the premise like in the West, right? It's like, don't do whatever you want as long as it doesn't harm. Okay. Yeah. But it's so superficial, right? So they would say that, taking speed and get dehydrated and dying, that's harm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Dying is harm. But that's very surface level, isn't it? Like, it's just about that little moment where you took that drug, right? But what about the 10 years before that, when through the media, through the education system, through this and that, you were teaching the kids that, do whatever, will give you pleasure. Yeah. So that's not harm, even though that leads to harm. So you have to go deeper, and it can't go deeper. That, for whatever reason, with their philosophy, they refuse to go deep enough to say, oh, actually, we need to go to the root of things. And in order to go to the root of things, we need to have a criteria for what's good and bad. And oh no, we don't have a criteria, because we just make up what's good and bad ourselves based on superficial harm or no harm. So, damn, we need Allah. That's the conclusion they have to come to, and they don't want to come to that. And so now we see all the harm that we see in the world, just because they would not submit to Allah's morality, or Allah's rules. And even if we're going to say, okay, submit to Christian rules or Jewish rules or whatever rules, but they just don't want to submit to any rules other than their own.
Ultimately, I speak to non-Muslims all the time, because that's who I'm surrounded with. And ultimately, I think the bad taste that the religion has left in the mouth is the people that abused it, right? So the I don't know, the priests and the leaders of Christianity of years ago, kings, the kings who just, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about it. Woe to those who change the scripture with their own sort of hands, and that has left a bad taste. And you know what? There's people that are so anti-religion. Well, actually, what they are anti is religious corruption in Christianity. That's what their perspective of religion is that. So they're like, oh, I hate organized religion. No, you hate the corruption that found its way.
What specifically happened in Western Europe with Christianity.
Exactly. It's not about religion, because you've never exposed yourself to the truth. What you've experienced is the corruption at the hands of people that sought, to change scripture for their own benefit. And you know what? That's, at the end of the day, there has to be some sort of self-judgment with that, because we're not free from that sort of perspective as well. We have people in our communities that try to use the deen to their own advantage, try to I don't know, to fulfill their own. And you see it now, Akhi, how many times of this cancel culture, as poisonous as it can be sometimes, it exposes a lot of things, right? It exposes a lot of things that unfortunately Muslims are engaging with in the name of the deen, or using the deen and the positions that the deen has allowed them, teaching it, or giving dawah or whatever, has allowed them to be in that sort of scene. Without naming names, but obviously this is the society we live in now, and because of that, unfortunately, you get a lot of people that are teetering on the edge of religiosity or identifying as Muslim and practicing, that see something like that, and even though it's not right and it shouldn't shape their perspective of religious people, that's exactly what they see, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I remember like speaking to people, old generations, right? Old generations of people that would assume. I remember hearing these exact words. He's only religious because he wants to marry more than one wife. That's the only reason. I remember hearing those exact words from somebody who's a much older generation than
Yeah.
us. And I was just like, SubhanAllah, where does that come from? The person wasn't practicing themselves, but their perspective, even from that generation, is, oh, he's only like that because he wants to get off easy. He wants this in the dunya. He's doing that for this in the dunya, you know. And even see it now. He's only religious because he wants to sit at home and be on benefits. He's only, so sometimes we have to, you know, and akhi, we're all victims too. I remember being, when I first started practicing akhi, my zeal for the deen took me away from the dunya so much that I didn't think that all of this stuff was important, like working and all this stuff. You know, I thought dunya is not important to me because I was so in love with all this deen that I'd found out about. And it's not until later on that I found actually that I do need a balance. There is definitely a balance that's required, because you can't fulfill your obligations otherwise if you're just, you know, sitting and praying in the masjid all day, 24/7, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, Allah knows best. I just don't like being someone who points fingers at everyone else. I like to try and, what can we do to change the society in ourselves?
And what's important is that, like when we like what I just said now, in terms of saying like liberalism failed and it can't work, it doesn't work, and this and that. It doesn't mean like me or Muslims, we are working completely well. It's just, of course, it's that the system that Allah gave us is what will give us that if we implement it. Let me just see if there's any other questions which he added. He said, so he said, why is it taboo? And then, I mean, I don't think I've heard of this where parents hide sexual education and then they ram marriage down my throat at 21. I've not heard marriage at 21 that as much of a common thing.
Maybe it depends on somebody's situation, right? So I could imagine, hypothetically speaking, if I was ready to get married. So if I got to a position, maybe financially, you know, education wise, let's say hypothetically, you know what, I'm a GP now, or I'm a doctor, whatever it is. I've studied, I'm out, I've got money, I've got a car, I've got these basics. I can imagine the conversation now shifting. I can imagine maybe my dad mentioning it, or maybe, you know, my mum mentioning it, not out of spite and like out of having a go at me, but I think out of just interest, like what's next for you kind of thing. And then I can imagine as time goes on, if I didn't, then that would happen. They'd stop. Actually, you need to think about getting married. Don't you want to have kids? At 21, Allah knows best, but it depends what kind of culture and background he's living in. Is he ready? Is he, you know, sometimes
he said, is it common with Muslim parents or is it just you? I mean, it doesn't seem common from what I know. At least.
You know what? I think it's more common with women. I think women probably get that a lot younger than men do.
About getting married. Oh.
Yeah, I think women have, unfortunately, this sort of clock on top of them that is like a ticking time, because men apparently can get married whenever. It's not the end of the world, right? But a woman, they consider, oh, she's getting close to her 30s and it's not, you know, Allah knows best, but that's a stigma I think that's been identified.
That's a whole episode.
That's a whole other kettle of fish, bro.
Okay, yeah, you know what? Actually, if this person writing this email is a woman, then I do understand that, right? Yeah, like you're 21, now get married. I get that. Yes, okay, I understand that. What I don't understand is just because they haven't like encouraged you or given you sexual education, it doesn't counter the idea that they want you to get married.
No, I agree.
It doesn't have to be linked.
Yeah.
Maybe when you like, because you're Muslim and inshallah you're not, you know, doing any hanky panky, you're not getting into that. You don't necessarily need the education straight away, right now, etc. But definitely when you are going towards getting married, they shouldn't shy away from it, you know, to that extreme, if you like.
And I think maybe they're drawing a parallel there because they don't equate each other. It's a part of marriage, but it's not
Yeah, exactly.
all of it. And I think maybe sometimes people fall into that, especially the younger people that are trying to get
Yeah,
married. It's like that's the only thing on their mind,
yeah,
right? So maybe that's why they're like, oh, why is that? If that equates to that, then why haven't you taught me anything, sort
yeah,
of thing.
yeah. I mean, obviously, as we would know, probably you probably agree with me on this, is like education wise, what you need for marriage is way more to do with communication and stuff like that, isn't it?
Mm,
Emotional
mm,
intelligence and all of that, especially
mm.
for guys, like the emotional intelligence side and communication. That's a lot more. It's a lot less instinctive, let's say.
Mm. And you know what? I think that element of it is what I would benefit from my father, right?
Mm.
I remember, and you know what? I was always hungry for my dad to teach me or to pass on words of
The
wisdom that
wisdom,
were
yeah,
that were not to do with the money and jobs and employment, but to do with this
yeah,
sort of
yeah,
thing about
yeah,
how to handle a family. And not just from me observing, but I wanted him to actually give me verbal advice. And I remember speaking to him once and I asked him just before I was getting married or around that time, because I was so desperate for it. I was like, have you got any advice for me?
yeah.
And
He's like,
and
bud.
he said to me, I remember he said to me, "Don't worry, you'll figure it out." And I was so annoyed, bro. Do
Yeah,
you
exactly
know what
what
I
you
mean?
don't
Because
want to
that was
hear.
like that was the pure opportunity. I thought, do you know what? This is it. This is
Bro,
the day.
if at that
My
point
dad.
he just told you, buy her lots of vanilla ice cream, you would have been like, oh wow, yeah, yeah. And you would have
But
written that down, taken
this
that
is it. But
seriously.
the only time my dad has ever said anything that I've taken or said anything that I was like, oh, that's valuable in terms of this sphere
Mm.
was off the cuff once. He mentioned about my mum. He probably listens to this anyway, but he was just like, "Oh, I just have to keep her on her toes," right? So his idea was that he doesn't make things too easy, whatever. He doesn't like. I was trying to think how he said it, the context of why he said it, but um, he's never too much or too little, right? I think that's his sort of whether he actually practices that is a different story. But I think his theory was like you don't shower them with too much love, they become sick of you, and then at the same time you don't give them none at all.
Mm.
So then they're always missing you, etc. So it's like
Mm.
that middle ground sort of push and pull sort of thing. And that was
Okay.
I was like, oh, it's fun. That's actually very valuable. But you know what? I don't think he was telling me that as like trying to
Yeah.
advise. But because that's the only thing I ever got from my dad, it stuck
Yeah.
with me for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
you know. Because you get it, Akhi, sometimes you see stories of it. I remember, Akhi, it was like somebody asked the sheikh once, oh, my husband, he's too good to me, you know? He's just constantly buying me things. He's
Yeah.
constantly trying to give me money, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sick of it.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's a phenomenon that probably
Mm.
exists,
Mm.
because maybe it becomes boring,
Mm.
Sometimes the anticipation of something and the wanting of something is more enjoyable than actually having it. Have you ever had like have you ever been so excited for something that you forgot what you were excited for, and then you remember what it was that you were excited for, and then your excitement diminishes? I get that
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. What was I so excited about? I can't even remember. I was just really excited. Oh yeah, it was only that. That's boring.
Mm.
Boom, it goes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Have you
SubhanAllah.
seen that video? Oh my God. This it's from Algerian TV. They're like interviewing random people in the street,
Right.
and all these women are saying, I don't know what the question was, but basically they're all saying, "إلى ما يضربنيش راجلي مشي راجل."
Really? Oh
Yeah,
my god.
loads of them saying that.
No way.
And then they're like, yeah, just not like with a fist, as long as it's a slap, you
Yeah.
know.
Oh my god.
I remember it was being shared around, and there was a lot of different women saying it, you know.
Just to translate, I didn't think we translated. To translate, what they're saying is, if my man doesn't hit me, then he's not a real man, essentially. SubhanAllah. But this is it, isn't it? The treat him mean, keep him keen, they say. You don't
Yeah,
want to be a nice guy, bro. Oh, nice guys finish
yeah,
last, they say.
yeah. I mean, there's a difference between you can keep them keen without hitting them in it. So
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not
yeah,
advocating that.
yeah,
Don't
yeah.
misconstrue. No, I'm just, Anyway, it's interesting. It's interesting, the dynamics. And yeah, I think those are the things I think would ideally, I'd probably like to teach my son the most. And I'd be excited to teach him that kind of stuff, right? I'd be interested in that. I'd be, I think, and that's a conversation that you can have, because you know why? Because that's something that is always going to be visibly observed between the child and the parents. So that he's going to see growing up
Yeah.
the chemistry between me and my wife.
Mm.
See why I remember having it. Okay, I remember like I always used to. My mum would always talk to me about dad, and my dad would talk to me about my mum, and I'd always think, why is my dad doing that? Come on. Like I remember, like I'd be annoyed at the way my dad treated a situation. I'd be so angry, and then it wasn't until I got married or had kids myself, a lot of that perspective then came to me, and I was like, oh, do you know what? Fair play, because because back then I'm thinking about just there and that moment. He's probably thinking about the whole, you know what I mean, the next few months or years or whatever it is, you know.
Yeah.
And maybe Allah knows best, you know, the short term versus the long term. And at least I know that my father was very much of a long term thinker. And a lot of the things and the upsets that I had were very much short term, the here and now, you know. But these are, I'm excited to have those conversations with my kids. But as far as the whole sex education thing, oh, I don't know, bro. I don't know how. It depends on the relationship I have with my kids, and inshallah, as they grow up, you know, I have that relationship. I can't really tell now. I'm definitely close to them now, but whether I'm going to be close to them in that, you know, I still speak to my kids like they're kids, you know. So at what point am I going to stop speaking to them like they're adults? Allah knows best.
What I hope to do is just like,
Here's a book, read it.
no.
Bro, that's the solution. Book, you read it, I'll test you later.
Yeah, like if the book is a prompt, that could be interesting. But what I was going to say is like, I just don't want this topic to be awkward. And I think we make it awkward because of what we read into it and because of our context. But you know, when a young boy or girl asks about something, they don't have that awkwardness because they don't know the wider context of it, right?
Yeah.
They don't know that it should be taboo or awkward or whatever.
Absolutely.
So if at that point you just answer them and you discuss it openly at that point, then maybe the awkwardness will be gone forever.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying to teach them, you know, stuff they need to know just before getting married when they're 10. I'm not saying that. But whatever level of detail is relevant at that age, then it's good. And remember, like if your child is going to have a good Islamic education, they're going to need to know a lot of these things, right? They're going to just come across a lot of these things, right? Like when you talk about tahara, right? There's a whole section that only applies to women that your son should learn about, you know, and your son would learn about if he's learning fiqh. And then we've got like the whole thing, bro, for example, yeah, like women not always praying, women not always fasting, right? It's something that's unavoidable for a boy growing up to know about, right?
Yeah.
So he should like that's
the prompt.
That's like a prompt that Allah has given us, where the boy can like get some of this education, and even obviously the girls, because the younger girls, they wouldn't really know about it.
You've hit the nail on the head because I was watching a video earlier. It's on child psychology. It's called "Toddlers Regulate Their Behavior to Avoid Making Adults Angry." It's got 4.5 million views. And essentially, it's just an experiment that they record where so they've got a toddler opposite an adult, and the adult is playing with some toys, right? Playing with toys, and then playing with the toys in a specific way, gives the toys to the adult, to the toddler. Toddler does the same exact thing with the toy. So it was like a ball, put it in a box, open it, blah, 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 whatever. Then there's another toy. So puts that toy away, picks up another toy. Plays with that toy in a very specific way. So it's like a set of beads, puts it in a cup, and then takes it out, puts it in a cup, takes it out. Whilst doing that, another adult comes in, sits down. As the first adult is playing with the toy, the other adult has a go at them, saying, "Oh, stop doing that. You know, it's really annoying. You're aggravating me." Right? Okay. Then that adult plays with it a bit more, then gives the toy to the toddler in front of the toddler. Toddler just stares at it, doesn't touch it at all, right? Despite the fact playing with the first one. So what highlights, like you kind of nailed, is that the social acceptability thing is formed at a very young age, you know? So the reason why I say you nail it on the head is because that sex education class that I did, my first ever exposure, because of how everyone else was reacting and how I got shamed for it, I immediately felt really shy and awkward, right? And then I remember feeling really shy and awkward in class, in
Mm.
when I was speaking to my mum about it. I was like, oh my God, like, how do I ask my mum? But then, and I don't want to go into detail, but there were other things that happened later on in life, you know, as boys grow up, or as kids grow up, that I didn't understand. I didn't understand what was happening to my body or whatever. And I remember, Aki, you know, without getting explicit, I remember going into my parents' bedroom, mum and dad, and I remember asking them, oh, this is happening to me. What does it mean? Why is that
Mm.
happening?
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, fully no shyness whatsoever
Mm.
in front of my
Open,
mum and my dad,
yeah.
because there was no sort of,
Mm.
you know, number one, there's no internet to Google it. Number two, there was no sort of social thing that this happened to me in front of people. And now thinking back on it, I'm like, oh my God, how the hell did I do that? Like, why did I do that? Because I've got that social sort of thing now. But at that point, I didn't have any of it. It was complete zero.
Yes.
So I went into there, like literally going into the bedroom, and they were both there, you know, chilling or whatever. And I was just like, oh, and they gave me an answer, which was, I remember they were very like shocked and stuff, looking at each other like, oh, that's a bit awkward. And then they just gave me an answer, and I was like, oh, okay. And I left. But it just goes to show, you're right. You're very much right that if we get in there early when there's zero shyness and implication, because they haven't been exposed to it yet, actually, what you end up having is a very mature child that is very much aware, because when they do get faced with that, well, actually, they're the most mature person in the room then. You know, maybe if I had been taught properly beforehand, that my first exposure to that lesson wouldn't have meant much, because maybe teaching them that stuff before they are sexually charged and aware and attracted to the opposite sex, because they're not necessarily thinking like that when they're a bit younger, are they? They're very aware. They can have a conversation at 6 and 7, but they're not, if you talk to them about that, they're not really going to think about, you know, acting upon that, because that interest isn't there, you know. Actually, maybe getting in early is a benefit.
Yeah.
You know?
And you know what? A lot, or most, you could say, of children learn about this stuff from their friends, right? Unfortunately, they learn about it from their friends of similar age from these kind of websites, right? Unfortunately. Now, what if they learnt about it from a mature adult who cares about them, right? What would their approach and mentality and attitude be towards the subject? They'd be more informed, more mature about it. It'll be less of a, maybe like a giggly topic. It'll be more like, just like, okay, this is like how things work, you know? So that could make a difference as well. But bro, I'm just thinking more and more about this. Like, again, the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, when the lady, I guess lady is the word, you know, when she you know, locked him in the room, etc. Like, are you going to skip over that story? Like, how are you going to explain that story? Right? These are all prompts. So if your child is reading the Quran, he's reading different stories, Sahaba, this and that, he's going to come across it, she's going to come across it, and those are all prompts for you to go into the topic in, you know, as they get older, in more and more depth and detail.
And I think, do you know what? A big key thing, Akhi, which I think I've glossed over, because we do gloss over it and take it for granted, is, I don't know, maybe it's because of the world I live in or work in, but there are predators out there, and there are people that take advantage of kids, especially girls, that, you know, do you know what? My wife often says this, and I believe it's true, that there's very few girls that you can talk to that haven't been like sexually assaulted or gone through some sort of experience in their life where someone has tried to take advantage of them. I think that if you were to just take a sample, an anonymous sample, like you asked a question to 100 sisters, you would get a shocking number of positive responses, even at quite a relatively young age. You know, if you got 100 16-year-old Muslim girls and ask them this question anonymously, you would get a shocking response of, you know, I've been touched this way, someone's come to me, even in a very strict Muslim societies, right? But because of that, I think it's important to then educate them young about this, because number one, if they have no interest because that hasn't kicked in yet, because biologically they're not there, then they need to be aware that there's adults that have that, right? And that there's certain, you know, if you tell your daughter, I haven't got a daughter, but I can imagine if you tell your daughter, no, don't play with the boys, don't play with those boys that are older than you, you know, because maybe playing in the street with football, whatever, or don't know, you're not going to go sit on so and so's lap or whatever it is, right? They're not going to understand that unless you explain to them, quite specifically the dangers, but also that they need to understand what's acceptable and what isn't. Where do we draw the line on, on how, I don't know how close somebody's going to be with you or how friendly, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if going on to taboo topics and stuff, I think this is something that I have never seen anybody speak about openly in the Muslim scene, right? Yes, there's been stuff about sexual education and stuff like that, but let's just name it like it is. Pedophilia, rape, and sexual abuse and sexual assault is something that is actually completely so far removed from any of our discussions that I was shocked coming into this field of work, Akhi, how prevalent it is in the Muslim society, right? Without naming any names or any locations or whatever, I remember dealing with or being informed and maybe somewhat dealing with an imam that was nowhere local to where I live. So it's not any of the imams in this city or anything like that. I don't want to get anybody, accusing anyone. Nowhere from here, right? So somewhere completely different. An imam that was brought to my attention because they had asked me as a Muslim, people I work for, they came up to me and said, listen, is it necessary for an imam to attend circumcisions, right? I said to them, is he the one performing the circumcisions? Because there's like a home circumcision thing where they can invite the doctor to come and do the surgery at home.
Yeah.
I was like, no, not really. Why? He goes, we've got this imam who insists that he comes to every single one that the doctor does. They were like, does he have to do some sort of prayer or blessing or whatever? Do you know what I mean? They're basically trying to cover all bases. I was like, no, not that I know of. I don't remember doing it with my kids, and I don't remember it doing them done to me. And I to double check in case I didn't know and I'm missing something. I spoke to some people of knowledge and the imams I knew. I was like, is this a requirement? They're like, no, not at all. I was like, okay, that was sort of. I was like, no, doesn't seem to be the case at all. That is a bit odd. I don't know why. Maybe I like to think best. Anyway, there was an investigation, and they found that imam was always in possession on his computer of God knows what. Do you understand? And let's not go into details, but that's something that existed, right? So that was drawn to their attention, that incident. But how many incidents aren't drawn to their attention? How many incidents aren't drawn to our attention as parents, as people in this society? And unfortunately, we just assume, it's a sheikh, so-and-so, whatever. I'm not saying it. I'm not saying to label all the shuyukh. Of course not. Yeah. But in general, it doesn't matter if you're sheikh or not sheikh, or if this is something that is actually only certain people in society have I don't want to say benefit, not at all, but have the misfortune of seeing. That's what I want to say. The victims and the people that see the underbelly of the society. But generally, we just assume that this doesn't exist. We like to put it in the back of our heads. I remember, not to go into too much, but I remember my sister telling me that there was a boy at her school, right? And I remember when I used to take my sister to school, she was very young. I remember this boy, bro. I remember just seeing him playing with my sister football or whatever. They were very, very young kids. I remember thinking, mashallah, this boy's quite cool. Anyway, I remember her sharing to me that this boy was abused at a swimming pool. This boy by another man, right? And it ruined him, right? And I was thinking, my sister's young, same age as that boy, right? Of course, if it was to ever happen to a girl, it'd be shocking, horrifying. But and we need to, number one, be aware that it happens to girls all the time. But actually, I can't be negligent just because I have boys. I really can't. You cannot be negligent just because you have boys. Yes, the fathers of daughters should be very, very much aware, but we shouldn't actually negate that for boys as well. I myself was not aware that I was put into I've never shared this publicly. I'm not going to go into details, but I remember being in a situation, a predicament in Tunisia, right? In a Muslim country, that I was not aware of the consequences of what could have happened or what might have happened until 25, 27, when I was sort of really in this, because I was so oblivious to that being a possibility, right? I was so oblivious. And you know, not to go into details of the story, I remember having concerns about this person that was around me and the brothers, the men that were there. And I remember saying to one of the boys there, they're all older than me, these guys. I remember saying to him, Akhi, you know, in my broken Arabic, you know, I was saying, I wish he wouldn't like flipping be around me so much. It's really, you know, it's not, I said, you know, it's a homosexual sort of thing, right? I'm not into that. And they were like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like, I couldn't say it. I didn't know how to word it.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, because that stuff's foreign to them in that village. So then eventually one of them clocked on what I was trying to say. He goes, oh, don't worry. He's just friendly. That's just the way he is. You know, everybody knows him. That's the way he is, right? And you know, I remember bumping into my dad when I was with that guy. I remember my dad saying, oh, who's this guy? I was like, oh, he's this guy, you know, blah, blah, blah. And my dad was like, all right, well, cool. Just be home at a certain time, you know?
Yeah.
And I didn't notice anything. And then I remember being, you know what? I'll talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's go deep. I remember, so essentially, he invited me to his house. It was really weird. It's like, oh, I made a new friend, but he was a bit too clingy and a bit too, you know, and he's older than me and he's a teacher and all this other stuff. And I remember, Akhi, oh God, because I've never spoke to my parents about it. I've never spoken to anyone about it until I got married, and my wife made me think about it. And I was like, oh, anyway, you know, remember going into his room and stuff and showing me all his books, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we were talking last episode, weren't we, about Qaylula, right?
Yeah.
So that sort of afternoon nap,
Yeah.
right? So it was the heat of the summer and it was about 3 or 4 miles away from where I live. The stretch, so this house was about 4 miles away, 3 miles away from where I live. So it's walkable, you can walk it, but it's heat of the summer and there's literally no shade on that path. Like you're literally walking in the sun to get home.
Yeah.
So he was like, oh, just, you know, sleep here, have a nap here, whatever. Anyway, so I was like, fine, whatever. I don't really want to, but it was just very awkward and, you know, being very pushy, whatever. Anyway, I remember he essentially went to sleep, but he had me in like a headlock, bro. But it was like, looking back at the psychology of it, it's almost like he probably wanted something, but he was teetering on whether he should or shouldn't. But I wasn't going anywhere. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, right, I am not, like, this is way beyond, even though everyone's saying, oh, he's just friendly. I'm like, you know, screw that. I don't even care anymore. Like, I'm not down for that. But the concept of being assaulted or taken advantage of, whatever, didn't cross my mind.
Yeah.
Do you understand? I just felt like I was in a very uncomfortable situation. This is really weird because I wasn't exposed to that. And actually, I wasn't young, bro. I wasn't young. I'd already started practicing by this point. So I was at least over 18, bro. I was at least over 18, right? So I remember actually like feeling so like, how am I going to get out of the situation? Like, is he asleep? I couldn't tell because he's behind me. I couldn't tell. And I was just like, this is weird, bro. Like, who does this? Get me? And I remember like forcing, he must have been awake, but like pretending, do you know what I mean? Like just forcing his arm over me, getting my shoes on and just leaving the house, not saying a word to him or his family, whatever. Bro, that was the last time I ever spoke to him, right? I walked through that heat all the way home, didn't say anything. Oh, you're home early? Yeah. Didn't say anything. I used to see that. I remember I came back to the UK. He started messaging me on Facebook, trying to be friendly and all that stuff. I just ignored him because I was just like, that was weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, lo and behold, once I got to this job, bro, I had a workshop. There was a workshop to educate us on sexual assaults and, you know, all this sort of stuff. And they asked, you know, this might be a motive question. Has anybody ever been in that situation? And I didn't put my hand up. I didn't think I had been, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until people started talking about their stories that some and then I heard a story about a boy that was basically killed from another guy, basically not what he did to me, but, you know, engaged in this sort of activity until the final result was that he was unfortunately raped and killed, right? And the mother shared that story. And it wasn't until the end of that story that it just hit me like a ton of bricks, bro. That I was like, oh my God, because that wasn't normal to me. It wasn't normal.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was normal for anyone, you know, even in that society where people can be friendly and stuff, right? And now I'm thinking, and it hit me, bro. I got so emotional, bro, because I was just like, oh my God, did I just like dodge a bullet that I wasn't even aware of? And it made me think, this stuff is out there, it's prevalent. And, you know, as a father of boys who, mashallah, beautiful boys, handsome boys, you know, whether that doesn't really make a difference for a lot of people. But, and then also this job, you know, dealing with people that have that interest, have those tendencies, and have committed those crimes, right? And it's not something that you can look at somebody, you know, you can look at somebody who's addicted to drugs and is like looking for the next hit, or somebody that you can see down the street and think, oh, he might be trouble. It's top and bottom, bro. It's people that are at the top of society, you know, suited and booted. It's people right at the bottom. It's everywhere. It's something that exists at all spectrums. So how do you protect against that? You know, how do you protect against that? The only way of doing that, because you can't even stereotype people, Akhi. You can't say, oh, it's people that are this age or that look like this or whatever. Watch out for those kind of people. Because you used to, you know, you'd say to your kids, listen, if there's a group of teenagers or whatever, be careful. You know, you don't want to get robbed, right? That's a bad stereotype, but yeah, but Akhi, this is everywhere. This is everywhere, all walks of life, you know? So I know I've gone on a bit of a tangent, but I think it's an important thing that actually that is the most dangerous taboo is, you know, God forbid, because at the end of the day, Akhi, and I feel for the sisters as well. I feel for both. But, you know, sisters may not be believed by their parents. This happened to me. No, clearly you've put yourself in a compromising situation, or, oh, no, you've actually committed zina with somebody, you know, it was a consensual kind of thing, right? No woman's going to want to discuss that, you know. You know, the man finds out on their wedding day, actually, she wasn't, you know, she's clearly been with somebody before. No, I was assaulted when I was younger. No, you weren't. That's a stigma that needs to go. And the same with boys. That's a completely new phenomenon that I don't think anyone's going to accept. And boys themselves don't come forward, right? Because of the stigma. Right? And the fact that I shared a story that isn't really, I wouldn't say got to that level, but very much I feel like actually that was probably where it was going. And that's why I wanted to share it, because actually I want to break that a bit as well, because it does exist. And it doesn't make me any less of a man. It doesn't make me any less of a man. I think it was somebody who was twice my age, you know, and I didn't clock on, and I didn't know until 10 years later, you know. But anyway.
Yeah, and I don't think you do, especially when you're younger, right? Until you don't realize consciously, but subconsciously there can be damage there anyway. And I listened to recently, I mean, it was 3 months ago or something, Tim Ferriss.
Yeah.
He did a whole episode about how he was sexually abused. And it was like very long and deep. And he was, you know, talking about how he's like, I don't know, he's like 45 now. And he's been avoiding it, I guess, his whole life in terms of like dealing with it. And he said, I think over the last few years, I don't know, he's been actively trying to like work on it and overcome it. And, you know, it's like, I guess, you know, maybe you do feel some level of scarring, even though it didn't go that far, right?
Oh, yeah. Because,
but,
you know, part of me is like, internally, you've got this battle like, oh, am I less of a man for allowing that to happen? Or... do you know what I mean? And if something did happen, if it went even further, would I have dealt with it? You know, what you know, all these things that pop into your head, and that's just me as a man. That actually nothing. I mean, obviously, I had concerns, but nothing happened in that sense.
Yes.
But imagine if it did, and imagine the women that go through that more than once in their lives, and then nobody would believe their side of the story, unfortunately, you know. And
what's shocking to me is how deep the what's the word, like the hurt or the scarring can actually go. And it could be something that took that lasted 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and it will literally ruin their
Someone
whole
forever.
life.
Yeah.
And this,
Not only that, but
the woman
there's
that Tim Ferriss
sexuality
was,
as well.
yeah.
No, go on. Sorry, the woman that Tim Ferriss what?
The woman that Tim Ferriss was like doing the episode with, right? She said, I've been like going to therapy and like trying to work on this for, I think she said 20 years. And she said, I'm not going to stop because, you know, I'm not done basically, you know, and this is the outcome of it. And it's quite crazy to think about. Like, it's like, you know, like, for example, if you shoot someone, right? So it takes 1 second to shoot someone and you can, you know, change their whole life. This is kind of like that, except, you know, obviously a physical wound is often less damaging than a psychological or an emotional wound, you know?
It's you know, there's no discrimination on victims, right? Actually, you know, the youngest I've heard of in my few years in this sort of line of work is 2 years old, bro, and that was a couple of weeks ago, right? 2 years old, and it just the thought, you know, the thought was just. And you know, sometimes I'm like, oh, am I overreacting with my behavior sometimes and how protective I am? Actually, I'd rather be. You know, I can't go to a park without scanning the area. I can't go to a play park without scanning the area and matching kids to adults. Because, you know, if you were to ask my wife, she'll tell you the same thing, that I will go to a park, you know, as I'm watching my kids play, I'm also watching every single adult and assessing them, right? And you know, I see, because I've had it where there's been reports of people, you know, members of the public, they'll call in and say, there's a guy at the park, don't get it. You know, he's not got the kids here. He's, you know, blah, 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 whatever. Or he's touching himself. Do you know what I mean? It happens. You get reports like that all the time. So my concern is, when I go to a park, I remember, you know, even recently, it was like a couple of weeks ago, there was a guy at a park and I was just like, I couldn't figure it out because he was so far away from all the other kids. Well, he was so far away from any kids that looked like his. He was on his own, sat right like at the top of the slides. So like the slides are like, there's a big hill behind the slides, and he sat at the top of that on his own reading a book. I don't get that. Why is that guy there? Who's the kid here? Like, and then like as I was sort of getting closer to him, he got up, walked, went all the way out of the park to the toilets. I was like, so whose kids? Who is he here for? So I took a photo of him, right? You know, and I was like bearing it in my mind, and I actually started walking that way to kind of confront him because it's my duty to. I feel responsible. He's sitting there. He's got no kids. So what's he doing there? Right? Anyway, alhamdulillah, as I was starting to make my way there, a girl that was on the other side of the park, teenage girl, well, a bit young actually, ran up to him and then they sort of hugged and then her family came in basically. So for some reason, he just got detached. I don't know why he was so far away on his own. But these are things I actively look at and think about. And I don't know how, you know, aware.
Do you think we should go to that level where, like, you can't have an adult without kids near a kid's play area?
I don't know, but because of what I've been exposed to, I can't help but see that all the time. And I'm not saying that that's healthy, but also I think there needs to be some sort of awareness for things that don't look right. And the fact is, there are people that call in and make those reports because they also feel that same way. And you know what? 9 times out of 10, I don't know. Actually, I don't know statistics, but often it is somebody who is in there, shouldn't be there and doesn't need to be there, right? Because what is your excuse? Oh, I like to watch the kids play. That's weird anyway. You know. Now maybe 100 years ago, actually, Allah knows best. But there could be some people that are like, you know, I don't know. It reminds me of my youth. I'm bored on my days off, whatever. I don't bloody know. But even now in this sort of society, I'll be honest, you know, we're talking about how the brother said that, brother or sister, I don't know who it was, that stated that unfortunately people find out about things in the wrong way, pornography and stuff. Well, actually, let's be real. There's a whole entire industry of child porn that is undercover, that is, you know, black market, and there's a whole industry, not just of the production of that material, right? Now think about it. Every single piece of that material, there's a victim on the other end. You know, there's at least one victim on the other end, the child themselves. Where's that child from? You know, what situation or circumstance has led that child to be in that situation, right? Also, there's the industry, the physical industry. You know, the IRL, the real life industry of people traveling abroad to basically be sold these kids. You know, I call them kids because they're not adults that are consenting into this sort of quote unquote business. They are kids that are being sold and trafficked, etc. And it's prevalent. And actually, like, you know, we got accusations of royalty that get involved in this stuff, let alone the everyday man or woman. So I just don't want to be, I don't want to be, sometimes you get a high profile case that makes the news, but it's few and far between. It doesn't happen too often, right? But actually, this society is riddled with this, and I see that here. So I don't want to say it doesn't exist in our Muslim countries, right? Because if we've got the highest numbers of flipping pornography addiction and watching and all that stuff, then best believe we've got every single ill in this kind of scope or this kind of arena that you can imagine. And sometimes it's very, very taboo, talking about this stuff in general, let alone the abuse. But sometimes you get hints, bro. Sometimes I'll be in a Muslim country and, the women will say something or something will come up in conversation and you'll just get a hint. And I don't know, maybe because of my perspective, I know exactly what they're hinting about, even though they didn't mean to, or something. You can just see it on their face. I've had people in my family, Akhi, that I can just see on their face that something has happened at some point in their life, right? And I wasn't in a position to ask them what happened. I don't think I deserve to know unless they want to share that. But it was just like, subhanAllah, this exists, bro. This exists. It is prevalent, and it's it's right right under our noses, and we're just oblivious. A lot of us are completely oblivious. Me and my wife. I remember my wife saying to me that she doesn't want she. To the point, like, we don't want, when people kiss salam, when they say salam, they kiss left, right. She said, I don't want anybody kissing him that if he doesn't want to, if he's not, you know what I mean? He's not comfortable. Because the first thing we need to teach our kids is where the boundaries are, to make a scene if they're not comfortable, to say no, right? And I think that's important because I was oblivious at 18, Akhi. Imagine my 3-year-old, I was oblivious at 18. You go to an Eid party, hypothetically speaking, there's kids running around everywhere. Fine, let him go. Let him run away. Let him run around and play. You don't know. Oh, I'm so-and-so. Do you know what I mean? You don't know. I'm not trying to make this into a dark sort of reality, but let's be honest. As you said, it's something that ruins people for the rest of their lives. It's something that I'm very much aware exists. It's there, and it's something that's not exclusive to just the West or the East or whatever. So if I'm going to, helicopter parent, and I'm going to helicopter parent. And it is what it is. Oh, no. I've opened your eyes to a madness, bro.
Yeah. No, it's like, it's one of those problems where I feel like shaitan's winning either way, right? Yeah. So if, these kind of things are happening, shaitan's winning. If it's not happening, but it makes you suspicious of your brothers and sisters, then shaitan's winning. So
I think it's just about the awareness, right? So, the reality is, Akhi, and there's countless stories and countless, I'm sure, wallahi al-azim, I'm sure that if we had a large enough sort of audience and people were actively writing in, they would share their stories, anonymously or whatever, because you would be shocked, as Mufti says, that this stuff isn't, I'm sure, what, Allah knows best, but I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if the majority of the perpetrators were family members, right?
Yeah.
Because those are going to be the people that are closest to that person, and they're going to develop that kind of ability to take advantage of them, okay? Because a stranger is always stranger danger, right? Strangers, generally speaking, kids know if there's somebody that they don't know, they kind of automatically have this, thing, inhibition, or whatever you want to call it. But when it's somebody, family friend, an uncle, a cousin, or whatever, then your guard's down a bit, and especially if it's uncles and stuff like that. But this exists, bro. This exists. And actually, when you say to your daughter, hypothetically speaking, I think I want you to wear your hijab in front of such and such or so and so, or actually you're grown now, you need to don't sit with the men, or don't, even if I know he's your cousin, or not cousin actually because they're not mahram, but your uncle or whatever. No, you still need to dress appropriately. You still need to. Do you understand? These are things that are important because. Not saying that you're going to stop pointing the finger at the adult or whoever it is. You're not doing that at all.
Yeah.
But you're actually developing an awareness because once again, we in the same way that we prevent, the prevention is better than the cure, so to speak. We have to be aware, akhi. But ultimately, it happens, and you can't, it happened. The thing is, the worst part of it is that it happens and the victims themselves can't speak up about it because they are scared that no one will believe them. And if imagine, akhi, imagine your child comes up to you, tries to come up to you, maybe not us, but generally speaking, comes up to their parent and says, "Oh, Amu so and so or Auntie so and so did this and this to me." No, of course not. Don't you be silly. You must have misinterpreted it. What are you talking about? How dare you? Or they get even angry at the fact that you'd even accuse them of such a thing. So just can't
really
fathom
get
it.
that,
But it happens, akhi. It happens.
No,
I'm not saying
I
that
always hear it. I just can't understand the reaction.
because it's so, like I said, it is so buried, like it doesn't happen at all, that it's impossible for it to happen. Maybe me and you are more aware because of the society we've grown up in, that it's more talked about and more prevalent. We hear these stories and stuff. Maybe back then it's just such a buried under the rug thing. Actually, even back then there's an industry behind it. So it means, and when I say an industry, I'm not saying these people are part of that industry, but I'm saying that there's clearly an indication that's the members of the society that want that, right? So supply and demand sort of thing. If there's enough of demand, that whole industry is behind that, then actually there's people with that inclination or whatever, or that desire to commit evil amongst us every day, and there's, it's not because they're Muslim or not. It's not because they're practicing or not. It's not because of their positions that they hold in society or not. We've seen that already. You've got people, the royal family, that have been accused of that stuff, or celebrities, or, politicians. And you've got people that every day, nothings and nobodies, so to speak. So if it's, people that attend the congregation at the masjid, people of knowledge or da'is or whatever, I'm talking about all sorts of spectrum, or just regular attendees. It happens, right? Happens. And anyway, let's wrap it up there because we've got on a bad one. But I think, you know what? Alhamdulillah, I'm glad that we've addressed, or we've brought this up in Mind Heist, because that's what we've always been known for, going a bit against the grain. And like I said earlier, I identified, actually, I've never seen anybody, no, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I've never seen anybody address it, at least from a male perspective.
That's true. I was thinking actually, bro, like, I would not be surprised at all, and maybe I've heard this in terms of statistics, that it happens more to boys when it comes to like very young, at the very young age. It could very well happen more to boys than girls, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's all sorts of factors. Do those particular perpetrators have a preference? Allah knows best. Do you understand? Is it just what's available in terms of what is it, circumstantial availability, or is it there's a particular preference? If somebody, I don't want to be explicit, but if somebody has that inclination and wants to perpetrate that act on a child, do they differentiate between boy and girl at that point? Oh, it's a boy. I'm not. No.
They probably have more access to boys, isn't it?
I think a lot of it is going to be, and also it depends how, quote unquote, ruined that person's mind is, where actually the only thing they care about is satisfying their own desire, right? So quote unquote, anything and anyone will do. Do you understand what I mean? And I think that's a spectrum, isn't it? I think there's a spectrum of how degenerate and how evil someone has become.
Yeah.
So, because at the end of that scale, the very extreme of that is, I don't care who it is, I don't care who they are, and I don't care about their life at all, because I will kill them afterwards. Yani, that's the extreme end of that. And listen, we hear all those stories, those extreme stories all the time, So if that's the extreme of the extreme, then there's going to be levels before that, that maybe are more prevalent.
How do I end
Understand?
this podcast, bro?
You end it with.
What do I name the podcast?
I was thinking that. Exclusive, bro. I told you.
Oh, just exclusive.
An Achi Tweet exclusive. No, don't do that. Do you know what? I'd really appreciate if this episode was shared. You know, I don't really promote our episodes too much. Like, oh, we need to share us and subscribe and follow and all that stuff. However, you know, I think it's an important sort of topic that isn't spoken about a lot. I think it probably should be a lot more within our communities. I think we're blind to the realities of it. You know, we just have to spread an awareness. You know, I think that the problem is we associate that activity with people that are outside of our community, outside of Muslim, especially here, at least in non-Muslim countries, right? So number one, our biggest downfall is that we associate it with outside, so we don't think it exists within our communities. Number two, even in Muslim countries, such as, you know, where you are, from your perspective, you just don't, it's just not discussed. It's not known. It's not, but it happens, bro. And it happens all the time. It happens all the time. We spoke about the extreme sort of, just obviously to conclude everything, we spoke about the extreme sort of addiction to that kind of material and that pornography and all that crap in our Muslim societies. So why wouldn't it exist? And we spoke about the extreme expectations for people to get married. And I'm not saying just because people can't get married means they devolve into that, but actually because people can't get married, they fall into zina a lot easier. They fall into these harmful things, and those harmful things can and often do lead to more extreme outcomes in the end, right? And I think that's essentially the where we're going to draw the line today. Oh,
One email was enough.
Alhamdulillah, barakallahu feek for the email. May Allah bless you, because you've initiated a very, very good, you know, sincere and frank discussion about something that maybe should and needs to be addressed. And, you know, I don't want this to be the end of it. I think maybe this should be something we, either us or somebody,
follow up on later.
Somebody follows it up on a more established and wider platform.
Mainstream.
Yeah, because, you know, I'll probably revisit this topic again. I might revisit it again with you know, Faisal and Freshly Grounded and all that sort of stuff and other sort of areas, because you're oblivious until you're a parent. And I was oblivious even at the age I was, because we associate that kind of stuff with a very, I don't know, very what's the word? Very particular stereotype. You know, we associate that behavior with a very specific stereotype. Oh, he looks like a pedo, that kind of person, right? Wherever your mind takes you. But actually, that's not it at all.
Yeah.
All walks of life, all shapes and sizes.
Remember,
you know?
Prison Break, bro?
I never watched it, bro. But Prison is a different story, bro. But see what? Sorry to go further, but that's if it is what I'm assuming it is about in Prison Break, then that shows the desperation, what people do under desperate circumstances, right? That's kind of what I was saying about you know, the difficulty of marriage and all this other stuff. I'm not saying marriage is the cure for that, or you know, but I'm just saying in certain circumstances it can be worse and things can get much worse. May Allah protect us.
Okay, I think it would be really good, like you said, bro, if people share this, and definitely if people you know, get in touch, and you can get in touch anonymously, so we can, you're right, like this is some level of platform, some size of platform where inshallah we can, you know, we just chit chat and we talk, and wherever direction we go in that, but there's no doubt benefit that can come as well. So if you want to share, you know, something with us, some kind of story, some kind of, you know, maybe, you know, you're involved in the you know, emergency services of some type, or in some different country, you know, it's all useful and stuff. So let us know, inshallah. Go to mindheistpodcast.com, and then you can contact us there anonymously, or on the email there. And remember to check out the video version of the podcast, which is on the new YouTube channel. Again, the link for that is in the description of this, and also on mindheistpodcast.com. And yeah, this has been episode 108 of Mine House Podcast. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. And thanks everyone for the questions. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam.